They told you it was food. They told you it was safe. But what if the meals you've trusted your whole life were built on lies, chemicals, and corporate shortcuts? What if every bite was silently reshaping your body, and your children's future? From your morning toast to your midnight snack, nothing is what it seems. So the real question is, are you ready to find out what's really on your plate? It looks golden, crispy, and harmless. The food kids beg for, the quick fix parents lean on. But beneath that crunchy shell, your chicken nugget hides a nightmare. Because what you think is tender white chicken breast, is often something else entirely. Behind factory doors, mechanically separated meat becomes the base of this beloved snack. That's a sanitized phrase for scraps, cartilage, bone fragments, tendons, all blasted from carcasses with high-pressure machines. The result? A pink, foamy paste the industry quietly calls slime. It doesn't look like chicken. It doesn't even taste like chicken. That's why they drench it in chemical washes, preservatives, and artificial flavorings, forcing it to resemble the meat you thought you were eating. And here's where it gets darker, that pink paste is often treated with ammonia. Yes, the same chemical used to clean floors and toilets. Why? To kill bacteria that thrives in this sludge. The FDA allows it. Corporations depend on it. And parents unknowingly feed it to their kids in school cafeterias every single day. Now imagine what that does inside a child's body. Growing hormones colliding with a cocktail of additives. Early puberty. Spikes in childhood obesity. Hyperactivity labeled as just being a kid. All traced back to the poison hidden in the food they trust most. Think of the betrayal. The smiling cartoon mascots on nugget boxes. The commercials painting it as wholesome family food. Meanwhile, experts have quietly warned for years that consuming these fillers could increase the risk of cancer, digestive problems, and long-term hormonal damage. But profit drowns out caution. The industry knows you'll keep buying, as long as they keep smiling. And the cruelty isn't just in the chemicals. Chickens bred for nuggets are stuffed into overcrowded barns, pumped with growth hormones to the point where their legs can barely hold them. They live a life of suffering, only to be turned into scraps, washed in ammonia, and fried in oil that's been reused countless times. That's what's hiding behind every box of fun-shaped nuggets. So the next time you see a plate of nuggets, remember, it's not food. It's a slow poison, engineered to addict your children before they can even read the label. And if you thought chicken nuggets were the ultimate betrayal, just wait until you uncover the ugly truth behind hot dogs. They sizzle on the grill, fill stadiums with their smell, and bring back childhood memories of summer fairs. But behind that harmless bun lies one of the most grotesque food deceptions ever sold to the public. Because a hot dog isn't meat. It's scraps. The truth starts in the factory floor. Hot dogs are born from the leftovers, the sinew, fatty tissue, gristle, and even organs that couldn't make the cut anywhere else. These scraps are pulverized into a paste, pumped with chemical preservatives, and flavored with salt so heavy it could stop a heart. Then, they're bound together with sodium nitrites, the very additive experts warn is linked to colon cancer. And yet, it's perfectly legal. But the part you were never meant to think about? The casing. That tight, skin-like snap when you bite in, it's not just a texture choice. Traditionally, it comes from the cleaned intestines of animals. Yes, literal gut lining. In some factories, synthetic casings are used instead, created from plastic like cellulose, but many still rely on animal intestines stretched and packed tight. You're chewing through the very organ that once processed waste. Does that sound appetizing? And then comes the long list of extras. Artificial coloring to make dull gray paste look pink and fresh. Flavor enhancers that trick your tongue into craving more. Fats that harden in your arteries long after the hot dog is gone. Imagine the betrayal, a carnival treat, a ballpark tradition, now revealed as a chemical-laden roll of waste products dressed up as food. The consequences are staggering. Studies have quietly suggested that eating processed meats like hot dogs daily can increase cancer risk by more than 40%. Kids who rely on them as a cheap school lunch staple are exposed to sky-high sodium levels that prime them for hypertension and heart disease before adulthood. Yet commercials keep selling you the image of smiling families and backyard barbecues, hiding the truth that every hot dog is a ticking time bomb for your health. So the next time you see that steaming hot dog at a baseball game, ask yourself, is nostalgia worth swallowing intestines, toxins, and cancer-linked chemicals? Or is it just another trick played by an industry that thrives on your ignorance? And if you think hot dogs are horrifying, brace yourself. Because the next betrayal hides in something even more innocent, the creamy childhood comfort of peanut butter. It feels safe. Creamy, rich, comforting, the taste of childhood lunches and after-school snacks. Peanut butter is marketed as wholesome, packed with protein, a healthy choice. But here's the part no commercial ever admits: every single jar hides mold. The danger begins long before peanuts even reach the factory. Stored in massive silos and warehouses, peanuts sit for months in warm, damp conditions. And in that darkness, something toxic takes root, a fungus that produces aflatoxins, one of the most powerful carcinogens known. The FDA knows it. The industry knows it. And yet they allow acceptable limits of aflatoxins in every jar. That means every scoop, every sandwich, carries trace amounts of a poison that silently attacks the liver. Think about the betrayal. Parents carefully packing peanut butter sandwiches into lunchboxes, believing they're giving their kids energy and nutrition, when in reality, they're spreading a toxin linked to liver cancer, weakened immunity, and developmental delays. The very food associated with childhood innocence may be seeding disease for the future. And it doesn't stop there. Many brands load their peanut butter with hydrogenated oils to keep it smooth and shelf-stable. These trans fats don't just extend the life of the jar, they shorten the life of the person eating it, clogging arteries and fueling inflammation. Add to that the sugar and salt mixed in for flavor, and you're left with a product that's less a health food and more a processed chemical cocktail. Of course, the label doesn't tell you that. Instead, it boasts natural, protein-rich, made with love. But what kind of love sneaks in mold toxins, artery-clogging oils, and sugar designed to keep you addicted? What kind of love bets on the fact that you'll never ask what aflatoxin is, or how much of it your child just swallowed? And here's the chilling part: regulators know the risks. Scientists have warned that even low exposure to aflatoxins over years can leave irreversible damage. But because peanut butter is cheap, popular, and profitable, they keep the thresholds high enough to keep shelves stocked, and families in the dark. So the next time you twist open that jar and spread it thick across a slice of bread, remember, it's not just peanuts. It's mold, toxins, and betrayal. And if you thought mold was the worst thing you could be feeding your kids, just wait until you hear about the poison disguised as sweetness. Have you ever felt strange or unwell after eating something labeled healthy or safe? Tell us in the comments. Your story might be the one that wakes someone else up. You reach for the diet option. You think you're making the smarter choice. 0 calories, no sugar, a way to slim down and stay healthy. But that little pink, blue, or yellow packet on your table isn't your friend. It's a trap, one designed to rewire your brain and poison your body. Artificial sweeteners like aspartame, sucralose, and saccharin were sold as miracles. They promised sweetness without guilt, pleasure without consequence. But the truth is darker. Inside your body, these chemicals don't behave like sugar. They confuse your metabolism, tricking your brain into expecting calories that never come. The result? Your cravings intensify. Your hunger spikes. And instead of helping you lose weight, these so-called miracle sweeteners fuel addiction and obesity. And it gets worse. Studies have quietly suggested that aspartame can break down into methanol, a substance that in large amounts is toxic to the nervous system. People who drink diet sodas daily often complain of migraines, dizziness, and mood swings, side effects dismissed as coincidence. But how many coincidences add up to a pattern? How many headaches are simply the body screaming against chemicals it was never meant to consume? Sucralose, the sweetener in those yellow packets, tells a similar story. Marketed as made from sugar, it's anything but. It passes through the body without being fully absorbed, leaving behind damage in the gut microbiome, the delicate ecosystem that protects your immunity and digestion. Scientists are warning that daily consumption can kill off beneficial bacteria, leaving you vulnerable to infections, allergies, and chronic inflammation. And yet, these products sit proudly on store shelves, labeled as healthy alternatives. Think of the betrayal. Diabetics trusting these packets to manage blood sugar. Parents letting kids sip diet sodas to avoid sugar crashes. People unknowingly swallowing chemicals that may be slowly dismantling their health. The irony is bitter. Artificial sweeteners were meant to replace sugar's dangers, but in reality, they've built an entirely new set of risks. Instead of freeing us, they've chained us tighter, to cravings, to chemical dependence, to the lie that a sweet taste can ever come without a price. So the next time you tear open that packet, ask yourself, is it really worth trading sugar for something even darker? Because if sweetness itself can be corrupted, imagine the betrayal hiding in the very bread you think is whole and pure. You see the words whole wheat and feel a wave of relief. Finally, a healthy choice. Bread that's hearty, natural, good for your family. But what if that warm, comforting loaf is nothing more than a painted illusion, a con dressed in brown? Most supermarket whole wheat bread isn't truly whole at all. The grains are stripped, bleached, and processed until almost every nutrient is gone. What's left is white flour, dead flour, dyed brown with caramel coloring so it looks hearty. And then the label slaps on whole wheat in big, bold letters. You think you're buying fiber and nutrition, but what you're really buying is deception. And the betrayal doesn't stop with coloring. These loaves are often pumped full of high-fructose corn syrup, the very ingredient linked to diabetes, fatty liver disease, and uncontrollable cravings. Imagine giving your kids a sandwich for lunch, thinking you're fueling their bodies, while in reality you're feeding them the same sugar spikes that drive soda addiction. A so-called healthy sandwich that sets them up for an afternoon crash, irritability, and long-term metabolic damage. The industry knows the trick works. Parents, desperate for healthier choices, grab the brown loaf over the white, never realizing both came from the same processed flour bin. And regulators let the charade continue. Bread can legally be called whole wheat, even if only a fraction of the flour actually comes from whole grains. The rest? Empty calories that rush into your bloodstream, spiking insulin, forcing your body to store fat, and leaving you hungrier than before. Now picture the cycle: a rushed breakfast, a couple slices of so-called whole wheat toast. An hour later, you're starving again. You reach for another snack. The cycle repeats. What you think is health food is actually an engineered hunger machine. And behind every loaf sits the hand of corporations that know the truth: if you're always hungry, you're always buying. So ask yourself, how many times have you trusted the label? How many times have you paid extra for whole wheat believing you were choosing health, when in reality, you were choosing a sweetened, dyed-up fraud? This isn't bread. This is betrayal baked into every slice. And if the food industry is bold enough to lie about bread, humanity's most ancient staple, imagine how far they'll go to corrupt something as simple as cheese. It looks cheerful, bright orange slices wrapped neatly in plastic, the perfect topping for burgers, the easy melt for kid sandwiches. But that smooth square isn't cheese. It's a chemical trick, a plastic-laced imitation designed to fool your taste buds and slowly poison your body. Real cheese comes from milk, aged naturally, rich in nutrients. Processed cheese. It's built from scraps. Factories gather leftover dairy dust, whey, and rejected curds, then fuse them together with emulsifiers, stabilizers, and artificial colors. That perfect melt you see on burgers doesn't come from quality, it comes from chemicals engineered to behave like glue. And here's the truth they don't want you to know: many processed cheeses contain ingredients more common in plastics than food. Sodium phosphate, sodium citrate, and emulsifying salts that bind scraps into a shiny square are the same kinds of agents used to soften plastics and industrial materials. Every bite is less about nourishment and more about chemistry. The deception goes deeper. That bright orange glow? It's not natural. Cheese doesn't come that color. Factories dye it with annatto and artificial colorings to trigger your brain into believing it's richer, fresher, healthier than it is. And the texture? That stretchy, glossy melt is the result of chemical manipulation, not quality. You're eating a food engineered for appearance, not nutrition. The consequences hit hardest where you least expect. Processed cheese is loaded with sodium, far beyond what your body was designed to handle. Just a few slices can push you toward hypertension, water retention, and kidney stress. Layer in the saturated fats and chemical binders, and you're left with a food that clogs arteries, inflames the body, and builds up toxins over time. Schools serve it daily. Hospitals include it in meals. The very places meant to protect health are quietly feeding poison. And think about the betrayal: parents pulling plastic-wrapped singles from the fridge, smiling as they slip them into lunchboxes, believing they're giving children calcium and protein. Instead, they're delivering plastic's cousin, disguised as food, straight into growing bodies. So the next time you watch that perfect melt stretch across a slice of bread, remember, that isn't cheese. That's an edible illusion, a slow-burn toxin dressed in a yellow wrapper. And if the cheese on your sandwich can be this fake, imagine the horror hiding in your dessert. Because what's waiting in your ice cream cone is colder, and far more sinister, than you ever imagined. If this shocked you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this exposé and subscribe, because awareness isn't just power, it's survival. It's the universal comfort food. A scoop after heartbreak. A cone on a summer day. Ice cream is supposed to be joy in a bowl, but behind its sweetness hides a chilling secret. Because the very chemicals that keep your ice cream smooth and creamy are the same ones used to keep your car engine from freezing. Factories don't tell you that natural cream and sugar alone can't create the glossy, long-lasting perfection you see in the freezer aisle. To mass-produce ice cream that ships across the world and sits for months without melting into slush, they lace it with additives. One of the most disturbing? Propylene glycol, a compound also used in antifreeze. In small amounts, it stabilizes texture. In larger amounts, it can irritate skin, damage kidneys, and disrupt the nervous system. And yes, the FDA allows it in your dessert. But that's not the only betrayal. Ice cream is often loaded with artificial stabilizers like guar gum, carrageenan, and polysorbate 80. These ingredients don't sound dangerous, until you learn they can inflame the gut, disturb digestion, and, in the case of polysorbate 80, slip past the gut barrier into the bloodstream. Once inside, they've been linked to hormonal imbalances and even infertility in animal studies. Yet you won't see a warning label. Just smiling cows and pastel packaging. And then come the colors. That vivid strawberry pink? It rarely comes from strawberries. More often it comes from artificial dyes, chemicals connected to hyperactivity in children and behavioral issues that leave parents desperate for answers. The chocolate swirl may not be chocolate at all, but flavorings engineered in labs to trick your senses into nostalgia. You think you're tasting memories, but you're tasting chemistry. Think about the betrayal: children's birthday parties, where scoops of brightly colored ice cream are handed out with laughter, all while their little bodies are being dosed with chemicals never meant for human development. A treat becomes a toxin. A moment of happiness becomes an invisible danger. And the sugar, mountains of it, ensures you'll crave more. Combined with the stabilizers, the dyes, and the antifreeze cousin, ice cream becomes less a dessert and more a perfectly engineered addiction. So the next time you dig your spoon into a creamy scoop, remember, you're not eating food. You're eating chemicals that could corrode a machine. And if that makes your stomach turn, wait until you discover what your favorite cola is doing to your bones, your teeth, and your future. It's fizzy, sweet, refreshing, the drink that defines childhood, parties, and fast food meals. But open a can of cola, and you're holding something far more corrosive than you realize. Because this isn't just soda. This is a chemical cocktail capable of eating through metal, and you're pouring it into your body. Let's start with the acid. Cola contains phosphoric acid, an industrial-grade substance strong enough to strip rust from machinery. Imagine what it does inside your stomach and bones. Every sip leaches calcium, weakening the skeleton from within. Over time, that daily can chips away at your bone density, leaving you vulnerable to fractures, osteoporosis, and tooth decay so severe it rivals drug abuse. But the danger doesn't stop at acid. That rich, dark color, the one that looks so inviting in an ice-cold glass, comes from caramel coloring. Sounds harmless, right? Until you learn that this coloring can produce a byproduct called 4-MeI, a compound quietly linked to cancer in lab studies. The FDA says it's safe in small amounts. Yet when you drink cola daily, those small amounts stack up, sip after sip, year after year. And then comes the sugar, or worse, high-fructose corn syrup. A single can contain more sugar than your body should consume in an entire day. That sugar floods your bloodstream, spikes insulin, and locks you into an endless cycle of craving. And when companies swap in artificial sweeteners instead, it's no safer, it's just a new form of chemical dependence. Think about the betrayal, soda companies targeting kids with bright ads, fun mascots, and slogans about happiness. Meanwhile, doctors see the fallout, children with rotting teeth, teenagers showing signs of early bone loss, adults chained to a drink they can't quit. Cola isn't refreshing. It's addiction in a can, packaged as joy. And here's the cruelest twist, you pay for the damage twice. Once at the checkout counter, and again years later in medical bills when the habit finally catches up. The corporations profit. Your body pays the price. So the next time that fizzy hiss tempts you, remember, it's not just soda. It's acid, artificial color, and an engineered addiction. And if you think a drink this toxic is shocking, wait until you see the final betrayal, the so-called purest food of all, honey, revealed as counterfeit gold. Which one of these so-called foods shocked you the most so far? Drop the number in the comments, we're watching closely. It gleams in the jar like liquid sunlight. The word pure stamped across the label. Honey has always been seen as nature's gift, the oldest sweetener, the cleanest, the safest. But peel back the golden glow, and you'll find one of the dirtiest secrets in the food industry. Because much of the honey you buy isn't honey at all. The scandal begins with dilution. To cut costs, many suppliers stretch real honey with cheap syrups, corn syrup, rice syrup, even refined sugar syrups that have been engineered to fool standard testing. The result? A counterfeit gold that pours just like honey but carries none of its natural enzymes, antioxidants, or antibacterial power. Instead of medicine from the hive, you're eating sugar water disguised as purity. And the betrayal runs deeper. Large batches of imported honey are often contaminated with antibiotics and pesticides. Bees, forced into overworked colonies, are treated with harsh chemicals to fight disease, and traces of those chemicals end up in the final product. Imagine spreading that across your morning toast, unknowingly feeding your family the very toxins killing off bee populations worldwide. Even the pure label offers no comfort. Regulations are so loose that a jar labeled 100% pure honey can legally contain adulterants. Unless the honey is rigorously tested, you'll never know what you're truly swallowing. And companies count on that ignorance. They know you'll never question something that looks so natural, so wholesome. But here's the devastating truth, counterfeit honey doesn't just cheat your taste buds. It cheats your health. Real honey supports immunity, soothes inflammation, and carries trace minerals. Fake honey delivers empty calories, liver stress, and hidden toxins. The very thing you trust to heal sore throats and protect your children from colds may actually be weakening their defenses. And think about the larger betrayal. Bees, the creatures we depend on for pollination and food security, are being exploited, overworked, and poisoned in the race for mass-produced honey. Colonies collapse. Ecosystems suffer. And all the while, corporations cash in, selling you a golden lie in a squeeze bottle. So the next time you see honey glistening on a store shelf, ask yourself, is it truly nature's nectar? Or is it counterfeit gold, spun in a factory, laced with chemicals, and stamped with a label designed to keep you asleep? Because after everything you've heard, from nuggets to hot dogs, from bread to honey, one truth should now be impossible to ignore: the foods you trusted the most were never what they seemed. The question isn't whether the industry betrayed you. The question is, will you keep letting them?